once you get into sobriety and starting to do work, and it doesn't matter what stage, once you've started to make the decision to change, you are no longer the person you were. So many people in this world just don't ever think about changing, and they just carry on the same. People who are listening to this podcast or going to support groups or giving up drinking, whatever, they are trying to change themselves in the way that I think about myself, the way I think about other people, my behavior. Everything is totally different to how I was when I was using. I was a nightmare when I was using and drinking. I was a complete and utter liability, a social liability, as Russell Brand so kindly said.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip Summers.
We don't need last names, Chip.
I suppose we don't know. I did wonder. I heard you go Veronica, and I thought, oh, okay, we're going down that road, are we? Okay, all right.
I'm dropping the last name, but
we're going to call ourselves something like Jay's. What is it? I'm going to be known as Omega from now onwards.
I'm dropping the last name because people, when they hear Veronica Valley, hear Valerie, and that's why I get Valerie all the time. So if I just say Veronica, then maybe I'll get it right. Yep. So yeah. Okay. So anyway, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm just back from a lifetime's adventure up in the Arctic.
Oh yeah.
Trying to see the Northern Lights, which I did in a most spectacular fashion possible, and it was as close as I'm ever going to get to a spiritual experience, but it was absolutely beautiful, and I got all the
because it was. I think I saw a photo. They looked like it was better than when you went last year, right?
Oh my God, it was no comparison. I mean, I'm slightly ashamed to even claim seeing the Northern Lights last year after this year. I mean, I did see some lights last year, and it was very nice, but I knew that I hadn't seen it as good as it could be, and I'm sure you could see them even better than I did, but I saw them in a way that was spectacular for me and made me cry. It was just so beautiful.
Wow,
so beautiful. Yeah,
there's something, there is, when you are in nature in all its absolute glory like that. I mean, you can. I think spiritual's the only word, isn't it? Yeah, to be just awed by its magnificence, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was prepared to not see them because I just loved it up there. There's something about the light, the air, the scenery. Just it's you really do feel as if you're in nature, as you said. And I had a lovely time. I was yet again as the only guy amongst a group of women, and they were absolutely fantastic. And we all went out every night, and they were wonderful. And we had a really great time. Yeah. And I've got some beautiful photographs. So.
Have you? I only saw some. I think I only.
Well, I know because I didn't only posted a couple. I mean, there's. I'll post a few more, but yeah. But
post a few more. Yeah, we want to see them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to today's podcast episode. We are going to be we answer your questions.
Yeah.
And this one is, the topic is negative self-talk. Now, Chip, I did think when we did this you'd struggle because I don't think you've ever experienced negative self-talk, have you?
Never, ever. I didn't know what they were talking about, but no, this is something that, I mean, the first question is from somebody called Kim, and she says, my partner goes through phases where he talks negatively to himself out loud. It makes me very anxious. I don't want to point it out and shame him because it means that he's already struggling, but it really affects my mental health when it's bad. I try to reframe and be sympathetic, but sometimes it's all I can do to calm myself down. I mean, I do, I am prone very much so. If I, just now, before we did this podcast, I couldn't find my headphones. And as I was charging around the house, I was going, oh, Chip, you stupid bastard. Why don't you put them somewhere where it could be fine, And I'm talking out loud to myself. I'm not just thinking it, I'm saying it out loud.
I've heard you do that many times.
Yeah, and I'll say, oh, for God's sake, or if I trip over and bang my, I'll go, oh, for God's sake, take care, or something like that. And there are lots of ways in which I will sort of berate myself for doing something careless or stupid, for want of a better word, leaving, if I went out like I did the other day, I left my wallet at home, I shouted, I said, for God's sake, get your shit together, and and drove home. Now, I don't think that is that bad or unusual. I think, I mean, I think that's, I'm just as capable of saying, oh, that well done, I did that really well. I don't say that out loud, but I'm not. To me, it's just a kind of, it's just like venting, rather than, do I genuinely think I am a stupid person? No, I don't. Do I genuinely think that I am careless? No, I don't. But, I think to me, that sort of stuff is just venting. Now, if this person's partner is walking around constantly sort of muttering how hopeless they are and how useless they are and how there's no hope for them, that to me feels different. Having a sort of, adrenaline vent because I've tripped up or I've lost, I think that feels to me, anyway, in my world, different to if I was walking around all day long saying, I'm no good, talking to Heidi and saying, I don't know why you're with me, I'm hopeless, I never do anything right. And, if I was doing that, I think that would be different.
I mean, I'd certainly remember being in the office with you and you'd be like that, oh, for God's sake, Chip, where did, but I don't think I ever felt like, oh, it was all sort of part of your chipness and humor. I didn't feel like it was ever, do you know what I mean? But
I know exactly.
Has Heidi ever felt like
never
that?
Never,
no,
it
doesn't.
No, I mean, and I think it's the same thing with driving. I will say, "Oh, you," not to another driver. I'll go, "Oh, you stupid idiot," and it's gone. It's not like I'm not sitting there festering in it. I'm just sort of venting an emotion. I'm frustrated, and somebody's done something stupid, and I go, "Oh, for God's sake!" But I could just as easily immediately turn around and smile and make a joke with somebody. It doesn't inhabit me. That's the word. It doesn't. I don't feel as if I'm walking around with a kind of sense of dislike of myself. And if somebody is continually putting themselves down over really nothing, or just sort of, and it feels like it's quite constant, then I think I would probably be saying, look, I'm really worried about you. I don't know whether you've noticed, but you do this. Do you want to talk about it, or maybe you want to try and get some help for it, because I get worried about it. It upsets me to see you talk about yourself like that, and actually to kind of, she says I don't really want to say anything about it because it shames him, but I think by doing that she's not addressing the problem. He doesn't know necessarily that she's worried about it. I mean, because from the way the question is phrased, it feels that she's struggling to sort of find a way to actually address it with him. And I think she should. I think she should do. I think she should be able to say, "Look, I really care for you, and it upsets me to hear you talk about yourself like this. Shall we talk about it? Or if he struggles with that, maybe you should go and talk to somebody about it." But there's something about the way the question is phrased. It means that, to me, it seems like a worryingly low self-esteem.
I think part of the problem here, Kim, is that it's affecting your mental health, because I think this is actually more about boundaries, is that you feel that you have to fix it, make it better. You don't want your partner to feel bad about himself. And we want to be positive supports for our partners, absolutely. But when it's a detriment to your own mental health, that's actually, I think, an issue with boundaries. In that, I think what Chip said is right. There's a time and place to say, I really care about you, and it really hurts me when someone I care about talks about themselves like that. There's a time and a place for it. But I think that having boundaries with this, because we can't fix people and we can't change people. There's things we can offer. We can definitely having boundaries will help. But I think if this is going on, I think you need to actually just take care of yourself and let him get on with it. And at the right time, to say, I've just noticed you do this, and I love you, and it really bothers me to hear you talk so badly about yourself. and to say it at the right time. But when, you know, when he's doing it, I think actually she needs to have boundaries, because I mean, everybody has negative self-talk. And one of the things, so we're all narrating our own lives, right? We're all narrating out our lives. You just happen to do it out loud a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the, I think some of the stuff you're saying is what everyone else is saying in their head. So we're all narrating our own lives. It's all the voice of the ego. And I've heard it said that negative voice in our head is usually the voice of our mother, which makes me as a mother be like, oh,
yeah,
right? Because and I try to be really aware of this with my kid. Like when my kids, when they spill something or break something or knock something over, when I was a kid, my mum would be like, and I'd be like, you know, freeze and I had that reaction. Like I feel it in me, like they've spilt milk, and I've been like, oh my God. And I notice how it affects them. And I really have worked hard on when that happens to be, doesn't matter. Everybody has accidents. Go and get the kitchen roll, clean it up. That's what we do, so that they don't have that. But I think, so everybody has this negative self-talk. And I think if it's affecting your mental health so badly, you have to accept that you can't fix him, Kim.
Yeah.
There's things you can offer at the right time and place. But I think what you need to have is boundaries, and let him get on with that, and realize for himself that maybe he wants to, you know, get some help or support with it. But we all have it, don't we? Everybody.
Yeah. Everybody gets it. I mean, I think, you know, you talk to, I don't know, for instance, film stars and things. Do you get nervous? Yes, I do get nervous. You know, do you get critical of the work you've done? Yes, I do. I think it would be, I think it's almost sociopathic not to sort of have the ability to criticize yourself, or to kind of, you know, because otherwise the implication is that you're perfect, which is slightly worrying attitude to take in the world.
Okay, so I want to move on to Susan's question.
Oh,
how do I let go of old?
Okay.
What?
Carry on. No, carry on.
Did
no,
you want to read it? Oh.
Well, no, because it was question 2, which I thought was a funny question. Question 2 was, why can I not have a perfect mother-daughter relationship with my mother like other people appear to do? Well, I would love to meet the other people that this person has met, because not many people do have perfect relationships with their mother. I had a terrible relationship with my mother. Yours has had its moments, for sure.
Yeah.
And every client I have has had a pretty dysfunctional relationship with their mother in one form or another, and their father, lots of absent fathers and things. But I think this person needs to be very careful that they don't believe that everybody is going around the world with perfect mother-daughter relationships, because I don't think they are.
Yeah. There's 2 words there. Perfect. There's no such thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's almost, I want to say perfect. Perfect is a form of negative self-talk. If we are trying to get the perfect thing, be the perfect thing, have the perfect thing, that's incredibly negative, because perfect doesn't exist and it's impossible. And and it's a really negative experience trying to get or be perfect. So, and the other thing is appear. That's the other word. Nothing is ever as it appears, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a couple of friends who both actually lost their mothers, who had really good relationships with their mums, called them nearly every day, went on holiday with them, really good relationships. And, you know, would have moments when their mothers drove them crazy, but had really, really good relationships. But nobody has a perfect relationship with anybody. So I think that's a negative story you're telling yourself, that's just going to, you know, for me, and I've spoken about my mom on this podcast a lot, we have such a decent relationship now, such a really decent relationship, so far away from an ideal mother and daughter relationship. Mm-hmm. But I've changed and worked a lot on myself. My mother hasn't. And that has enabled me to get past a lot of the stuff that used to just prevent me from connecting with her and having a relationship with her. Yeah. So I think that if you work on yourself, your relationships with everybody will change. But don't tell yourself the story about other people's relationships being perfect. It's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first started going to self-help groups, everybody appeared to be calm, you know, have it under control,
Well,
financially adept, well, never get angry, blah, blah. And I rapidly discovered that that was not how the world was at all. So in fact, I think it's the question should really be like, do you know anybody who has a perfect mother relationship? Because I don't think many people do. But anyway, yeah, okay. So that I just wanted to cover that one because I thought it was.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, off you go.
Susan, how do I let go of old grudges? I want to move on, but I can stay stuck in negative thinking about the past. I think that's really common, staying
Yep.
stuck in negative thinking about the past. I have an answer to this. The resentment work. Dealing with resentments is how we get free of one of the key ways to get free of the past, in my experience.
Yes. I am a victim of commonly, which are now called CSAs, childhood sexual abuse issues. And do I have grudges towards the perpetrators of that? Yes, I do. Have I let go of them? No, I haven't. I have let go and done work on my reactions to it, the impact it had on me, the way in which it formed my self-esteem, the problems it caused me in my life. I've done a lot of therapy on that. Has that enabled me personally to let go of the grudges? I suppose the way I don't give them the honor of thinking of them. I mean, sometimes something might come up, but I mean, certainly for me, to me that's a warranted grudge. This is two people who treated me extremely badly. I mean, I think when we're using and drinking, we do thrive on sort of little dramas, little personal dramas and grudges. And oh, did that person say that? And did that person say that? I think that gives an often quite mundane life a lot of interest. I mean, I believe addicts are even worse at this than people with drink problems. But, they'll create grudges and dramas to make what is actually quite a dull and mundane life just using and drinking interesting, and kind of that it's got a drama to it. And I think we do have a habit of hanging on to grudges because it gives a sense of interest to our life. And I mean, I've got a thing going now with, and Heidi has as well. Our neighbours have been complete arses, and have been really doing some
the bees, getting rid of the bees.
Getting rid of the bees. They've just chopped down a whole chop of our hedge. I mean, and it takes a lot to make Heidi cry, and and we've just decided that we're not going to give them the honor of constantly talking about them, because that gives them power. That old phrase about them living rent free in our head. I'm not going to let them do that. So we know their asses. They don't. One day they discover that in therapy. I don't know. I think it's unlikely. But we're not going to let our life be ruined by that grudge. And I think getting stuck in it sometimes. It does take time to let go of things. I mean, I had to do a lot of therapy I never got to a point of forgiving these two people, but I have got to a point of I never consider them unless
that's freedom, though, isn't it?
Completely,
freedom
yes.
from that.
Yeah. I mean, there have been a couple of times, because it was quite a famous school for abuse. They've done documentaries on it and things. That the name has suddenly appeared on the television screen, and it really shocks me.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think sometimes you need to question. What purpose? What does it? How does it benefit me? How does hanging on to this grudge benefit me? Does it improve the situation? Does it change the past? What does it do? Why am I hanging on to this? And I'm sort of asking that question rather than how do I get this? Why do you hang on to it? What's the benefit to you of hanging on to it? And, sometimes, I can think of one person in my life who I've had a pretty long life grudge against. what benefit does it give me? It makes me look better in a certain situation. Um, and I guess I'm talking about my daughter's mother, and it suits me to paint her in a negative way because that enables me to not have to take total ownership of the stuff I did when I was using and trying to bring up a daughter or not bring up a daughter. And so I think sometimes grudges play a role in our life. They can make us look better. And so I think that would be the question I would be asking is, why are you hanging on to it? What purpose does it serve? Because there usually is a sort of subliminal purpose that we're not quite, if we think about it, we will discover.
What you're talking about is the grudge turns into a blaming story.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
And the blaming stories are something that we use to not have to look at ourselves or deal with something ourselves, right? It's blaming stories do not serve us. They keep us stuck. And I mean, I think what you went through, Chip, it's about freedom, not forgiveness. It's like it was unforgivable. And you've used it. I mean, you have been involved in a lot of work around this, giving testimonies and all that kind of stuff. That's a positive way to channel that energy, isn't it? To hold people accountable and inform people and all that kind of stuff. But I think old grudges are resentments, and they're just they're stories that we tell ourselves. It's the classic drinking poison and wanting the other person to die. It's the most important thing is that you are okay, whether it was right or wrong or whatever it was. Your life is happening right now, and it's about you being okay. So for me, I find the resentment work to be incredibly powerful in changing the story I tell myself about the past and moving on from it. So that's my answer. So let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
This is another good one. Helen, do you want to read it?
How do I remove my limiting belief about my past relationships whilst drinking and know that I'm worthy of a good relationship in sobriety? I've been sober for many years, but I'm still not there yet with self-acceptance and self-esteem. Sometimes I don't feel worthy of love.
Well, I just want to say,
go on, you go for it.
My relationship history before I stopped drinking was a train wreck. I mean, she says past relationships, so I'm assuming romantic relationships, but friendships as well. All my romantic relationships were a train wreck. All of my relationships had issues and were not easy. Nothing ever felt like it flowed, and nothing felt easy.
No.
Like all of my relationships felt a bit complicated and this and competitive and secretive and toxic but since being sober and doing a lot of work on myself, that's improved dramatically.
I mean, I think this sounds a bit simplistic, but we are once you get into sobriety and starting to do work, and it doesn't matter what stage, once you've started to make the decision to change, you are no longer the person you were. You are in the process of changing. I mean, so many people in this world just don't ever think about changing, and they just carry on the same. People who are listening to this podcast or going to support groups or giving up drinking, whatever, they are trying to change themselves. And, I am of course I am intrinsically the same person, but in the way that I think about myself, the way I think about other people, my behavior, everything is totally different to how I was when I was using. I was a nightmare when I was using and drinking. I was a complete and utter liability, a social liability, as Russell Brand so kindly said, and accurately, unfortunately. And, I can't, and yes, you're right, all my relationships were very needy on my part. I was always amazed that anybody would be in a relationship with me. I didn't treat people properly. I was so involved in my drinking and using, I think, so did that bleed over into my sobriety? Of course it did, because not everything changed the day I got sober. Of course, some of those limiting beliefs bled over into my early sobriety, and my self-esteem, my low self-esteem bled over into my early sobriety, because it takes time to change those things. Those, your belief about yourself, your self-esteem, those things take quite a long time to kind of shift dramatically to a point where you can think, no, I'm actually worthy of a good relationship, and I'm worthy of a caring relationship and things like that. I don't think there's maybe a little bit of impatience there, but I think to really focus more on who am I today? What am I, what am I worthy of today? And I'm worthy of being treated in respect. I mean, and that's another thing that I think we've done a podcast on, is how we get into patterns in relationships, and we tend to, how many people have I spoken to as clients, who, what's your perfect person? Who would you like to be with? Well, I'd like to be with somebody caring, supportive, understands me, talks to me, etc., etc., etc. And by the end of it, they're thinking, well, actually, that person sounds quite dull, because the people I've had in the past have been, bad boys or bad women, and kind of, drama and excitement. And I think all that stuff takes time to change. And, I've had, as it's well documented, a few marriages, and 2 in recovery. And I think it's, I think the relationship I have now, we've been together, 21 years now, it's at its best now, because we've both learned a lot about each other, grown together, and I think it's the best it's ever been. But it's taken a long time to get there. I think you have to separate, although it's a bit of a, you have to separate how you were with how you are now and how you're going to be in the future. None of us were great, really, when we were. There's not many people who come into sobriety who have been fabulous people, who've been kind and considerate and have wonderful families and things like that. We're different people.
What you're saying is, I think what she's doing there is, how you've behaved in the past is not who you are. Like there's such a distinct line for me with, I mean, and it didn't happen overnight. The first day of sobriety, I was still not making great choices. If you, I behaved terribly in relationships. And the other thing is, I also accepted crumbs from the table. So the people I was in relationships with, frankly, were not worthy of me. Yeah. And I'd be almost a bit embarrassed if my husband met half of those people, because he'd be like, what? I can't see you with, but that's what I thought I was worth at the time. So how I behaved then is not who I am. I feel with some of these questions, it's not just being sober that does it. It's having a practice. It's having a program. We're decades sober and we still work programs because this stuff doesn't disappear when you stop drinking. This is why you need to self-reflect. This is why you need to, and Chip and I do different things, but it works. It doesn't, pick something and stay with it. It's the consistency of that, which is, can I just say, well, I'm mentioning it. If you're interested in learning about a sobriety program, I have one launching next week. Okay. So go to soberful.com to check that out. And it's all about this. It's all about building a sobriety habit, stopping. I feel like almost every podcast we do comes back to this. Stopping drinking is not enough. No. You have to do more. It's drink. I've been saying to people, the stopping drinking is 10% of the deal. It's a really important part of the deal. You can't get anywhere without it. But 90% of the deal is emotional sobriety. Yeah. It is all of the work you do on yourself. So I would wonder, Helen, what are you doing and what are you doing consistently? Therapy's good, but it's having a program, a way to self-reflect and learn from yourself. That has led me to finally be able to accept myself as I am and know that I'm not perfect and know that my mistakes are not part of my identity and let go of shame and all that kind of stuff. It's a process. So that would be my response to that. Don't think that how you were in past relationships is who you were, because it's not. It just isn't.
No. And you say, I mean, I changed certain things. I mean, an example I would give here is that I went into rehab. I was an awful thief. When I was using, was a kleptomaniac, and I made a decision when I went into it. I'm going to let go of that pattern. I'm not going to do that any longer. And about 2 weeks into rehab, there was a big community meeting, which there was every week, and somebody said, "Oh, something's going missing every day." And of course, I immediately thought everybody thought, "Oh, well, that's Chip because that's the sort of thing he would do." And I hadn't done it, but I kind of felt guilty straight away, even though I had changed my behavior. And it was at a moment when I thought, "Oh no, I'm not that person any longer. That's a different person." And sometimes people don't allow us to change as well. That's another thing that sometimes happens is people expect us to behave the same way. Maybe we've got ourselves a bit of a reputation and people expect us to behave the same way. But I think it's, the bit that stands out for me there is about my past relationships, brackets, while drinking. There's very few of us who've been through that heavy drinking experience who've had great relationships. They've always been, for the wrong reasons, tainted, dominated by alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. So I think it's important to allow yourself to be a different type of person and to be a new person.
Yeah. We've got time for one more quick one. Let's do Sam's.
Okay.
How do you overcome trauma in your past that brings up the pit of your stomach feelings in relevant situations that used to drink to deal with? Is the only solution CBT, etc., as they're hardwired in now, or can the trauma ever be dealt with so the feelings don't arise in the first place? I mean, my answer and experience is yes, you can. What I found with clients is there's lots of different modalities: CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, EFT, what I practice. The thing is, you have to find the thing that works for you. And that's sometimes the challenge is not, somebody might do EFT and it's fantastic and life-changing and solves things. And somebody else may not have that experience, but CBT really, really helped them. So that's one of the things is you have to, but I think there's a lot of modalities out there right now that can help enormously with trauma. And I have seen lots of people who've had, Chip's one of them, who've gone through it where it doesn't own and rule their life anymore.
I think the only thing I would agree completely, absolutely completely. I think expecting to never ever be have a feeling about that in the future is unrealistic. I mean, I know I just gave an example of watching a documentary about the prep school, what I don't know what you call it in America, school I went to, and the moment I saw the name, I mean, this was only a couple of years ago, the moment I saw the name of the school on the television screen, I started crying because I was with Heidi, thankfully, because it just sort of suddenly, boom, it was like if I'd been in a stressful, and it suddenly reminded me. And I also know that, I feel that I had a traumatic experience in the way that I was ignored and abandoned by my mother. And if I see, particularly a young boy, I think I've said this before in podcasts before, but if I see a young boy about 6 or 7, 8 being ignored by their mother and he's upset and he's crying, I have an almost phobic reaction to it. I can't watch it. I know what's going on. I know why I'm reacting that way. I know it's my past coming up and everything, but I have to get away from the situation. I don't like watching that. I can't. So have I got to a point where I look at that situation and have absolutely no feelings about it at all? No, I haven't. But I am able to sort of see it for what it is, see my reactions for what they are, and go around the corner and sort of probably hopefully talk to somebody about it and it's gone. But I don't think you can ever kind of delete something from your brain. I think something might just trigger it unexpectedly sometimes, but I think the secret is to do as much work as you possibly can. And the beauty of life nowadays is that there are, as you quite rightly said, so many different ways of finding support, so many different, I came into this whole business when there were articles in the newspaper about oh, people talking about themselves, and that whole kind of very British thing, that there was a real resistance to people, there was a lot of articles in the paper about, oh, just, stop talking about feelings, just get on with it,
That was so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. And that's changed completely. And there is such an acceptance now that we need to talk about these things. They are important to talk about, and there are lots of places where you can get help. And some people suit some people's responses, and some people respond better to other things. But I mean, there's plenty of choice out there.
I think what you're saying as well is that we have all had things that really affect us and trigger us from the past. And what you're describing, Chip, is I think it would be inhuman to not have the feelings, but what you're saying is you don't get stuck in them anymore. You're able to move through them. Like I have hooks as well, that you just see something, you go, oh, it really bothers you, and I'm able to feel those feelings and know why, and then I'm able to move through them so that they don't own me. And I certainly don't want to numb them or take a substance or anything like that. So I think it's like you can it's part of your story, part of your tapestry. There's an awareness, but it doesn't own us in the way that all we can do is find a substance to put in our body to numb it. Like that can be most certainly overcome. So Sam, what I would say is really really advocate for yourself and explore all types of therapies. EMDR is really good for trauma. I think EFT is really good for trauma. CBT, there's lots of other somatic therapies, there are a lot, and I think if you keep looking, you'll find one that really, really helps you, so that can be part of your story but doesn't own you in the present anymore.
And I think you said it earlier on, but I'm going to reinforce it now, is that all these questions underline how just giving up drinking is not the answer. I mean, of course it is very important to do that.
It's the first
thing. But if that was all that was required to get better, I would just hire a big warehouse somewhere, stick 300 alcoholics in there, come back 3 weeks later, and they'd all be fixed. They won't be. They'll all be have a multitude of problems. And it's the people who are prepared to do the underlying work that have good, happy, sustained sobriety. And all these questions really come back to find a place where you can self-reflect, get support, listen to answers, listen to other people's experiences, and know that you're not alone in the world carrying these things, and there is plenty of help out there.
So that's all we have time for today. We do a regular monthly, we answer your questions on various different subjects. So if you have a subject you'd like to suggest, please let us know and we'll gather questions for that. Otherwise, let us know what you think about the podcast. Please go to soberful.com if you want to find out about how to build a sobriety habit, because I've got a program studying about that. Otherwise, we will be back next week and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Sorry if you didn't get your questions answered, but yes, see you soon. Thanks a lot.